Our listeners know that I have been very vocal over the last 3.5 years that we've been doing this program with my desire and wish, aspiration that our country get back closer to God. Well, our next guest, Bruce Wolff, has written a book that espouses just that. Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path, Learning to Trust God When You Can Barely Understand Him. That's an interesting title. Welcome, Bruce. Thank you for joining The Truth today. Is the fault that God is mysterious, or that people just haven't invested the time getting to know him?
Oh, probably all the above. Thank you, John. Good to see you. Yeah, I mean, an omniscient God and people that think they know a lot but really don't. I don't know how you interface without some of it getting lost in the interaction there, but mysterious, obscure. Yeah, it sounds like a normal day getting to know the Lord.
You've had a very interesting life and career. You were the son of a missionary who was with the Salvation Army, drug you all over the world. And then you followed in his footsteps and have done your own mission work. And you've been able to combine it with my love of aviation. What a great pursuit. So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, we'll try to give the thumbnail version because if I have to step through the 27 moves in 20 years, we're going to be here a while. So honestly, I don't remember most of those, but I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, to two parents that started out in New York City. So there's a whole backstory of what brought them to the South. But Dad was with the Salvation Army, and he was stationed as the preacher, a captain in the Salvation Army at quite a number of locations around the South, and including the Carolinas and Florida, and at one point Atlanta. But then he was appointed as a missionary with the Salvation Army to be the leader, a principal of the Salvation Army Training College in Lagos, Nigeria. So after all those moves around the South, we lived in England for just under a year, and met the Queen while I was a child there in 1965, and then we moved to Lagos. And we were there just a short while, and the Biafran War, for those out there my age and maybe your age too, John, can remember that, but they started to shoot, and it's still known today as Africa's bloodiest coup, the war with Biafra, and we honestly wound up evacuating there in 1967 with basically what we could carry, and came back to the States. So that's kind of a rough background for exposure to missions, I'd say, and took years to get over and try to sort through, what in the world was that all about? Well, in that sorting through, I realized the Lord really had exposed me and stretched me in a lot of ways. I was called what you'd refer to as a third culture kid. Growing up in another spot different than where Mom and Dad grew up. Now we're back in that place, which is familiar to them and strange to me. So a lot to work through, and knowing I had technical skills, after college, started a family and then wound up going back to school, went to Moody Aviation because I just love to use my hands, and I'm a flight instructor, an aircraft mechanic, and a commercial pilot for 35 years now. And the Lord used that training to put me in a role as a missionary pilot in Mexico, serving with the United Indian Mission for 7 years. And while there, learned of the shortage of recruitment in this area. Not a lot of guys go into this because it takes a lot of time and training and expense to get the training, but as a missionary, you make a subsistence income, and it's tough to pay off debt. So it's kind of a steep incline to recruit for this. So therefore, there's a big shortage. We started an organization in 2000 called Brigade Air, which does exactly that through a camping program and a curriculum with young people. We've had about 4,000 kids in 21 states and 6 foreign countries go through our program since 2000.
That's amazing.
So that's the circuit. That's not bad for about a minute and a half.
That's a good summary, and what a wonderful life you've been able to lead. So tell us about the book, Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path. What is the premise, and what are you trying to convey?
I guess you say something's obscure when it's hazy. You can't really see your way clearly. And, there's elements of that throughout the whole Word of God that suggest to me that that's on purpose. Um, Number one, God's omniscient. He's all knowing, all powerful. He knows everything. And He made us. He's the creator. So, how does the created interface with the creator? I think we're always going to be at a disadvantage there. And so, how do you know a mysterious God that can create with words, as it says in Genesis? He spoke and things came into order. Well, He gave us His word, but within the word, even in Psalm 119, 105 is a great verse. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. That lamp under the feet, I thought Hebrew poetry, lamp to the feet, light unto the path, sounds like same things spoken two different ways. But the longer I looked at that, I think the Lord showed me something back when I was going through Moody Aviation in Tennessee, and it was this. The lamp under the feet is static. Light unto the path, that's dynamic. That lamp, you're standing still. It's a little tiny flickering flame on a little oil lamp, maybe a palm-sized bowl of oil with a wick made out of either flax or goat hair, just a 1-inch little flame. You can't run with that. You're going to walk slow and careful. But if you're standing still, you're only going to see your feet. But it's once you start to take a step with it, now I got enough light for what? One more step and one more step. But it seems incredible that God gave us His word and described it as a little flickering flame, a lamp under our feet. Not very bright, not very American. We want 50,000 candle power that sees around the corner. But we got a lamp in the feet. When we start to move with it in the light we were given, it becomes a light unto our path. And that's where the path is formed, is a small step at a time. So I think it's a method of guidance that the word that God intended on purpose. It requires us to take it slow and careful and constantly taking a self-check. Is this where you want me, Lord? But you still got to trust Him completely and take a step. It's not in the dark. It's into a dimly lit path. But you do it a step at a time. So my book is my story of how that started. I was a broken kid and a lot of haggle, a lot of moves. I didn't know where I was from, and all of the challenges involved with figuring out who God is and who I am and what He wanted to do with me. And I wound up going to training as a pilot eventually. And the Lord actually used me to do some things here. So we're still actively, our program recruits kids into some people call this the church's best kept secret, missionary aviation. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, that's sort of what my background. It takes us from the time of my being a kid all the way through training and then starting Brigade Air 26 years ago.
Well, I can't say that I am a student of the Bible. I wish that I were. I need to take the time to read the Bible and study it. It's one of those things that I've always been intending to get around to. But I did grow up in the church, and I do attend church, and I serve my church, but I can't quote the scripture and have a meaningful conversation with you or any other theologian that knows the Bible well. Although my mother was reading the Bible for the 4th time when she passed away. She loved the Bible. She did talk about the Bible a lot. But is it an oversimplification just to think that our life is pretty well choreographed if you just read the Bible and stick to the teachings, which I can't quote the Bible, I can't explain it, but I know the 10 Commandments, and I do pray, and I do believe, and I do try to live a godly life. Is it possible without having become a student of the Bible and knowing it intimately?
Well, I think you get to choose how close you want to walk with the Lord. And it's you can never exhaust what there is to learn, because the Bible describes itself as living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, that it can divide between our intentions and our words and our actions. You go, that's a mouthful. Sharper than a two-edged sword, living and active. It's not just words on a page. That God has designed it in such a way that as we interact with the precepts and principles that are thankfully printed down, that our walk with Him grows, it deepens, our faith deepens. It takes our interaction and our desire and obedience to want, like the old hymn says, just a closer walk with Thee. You know, it's there's His part and there's our part. Let God do His part, but we've got to be faithful to our part. And even Jesus with His disciples, you saw there were concentric circles. There was Jesus and Peter and John. It's kind of the inside 3 or 4 guys there, right? And then there's another circle outside and another, and you keep going until you get to Judas, who, why the Lord called him to be a disciple is a question I'll ask him when I get up there. But there are circles to it. You get to decide how close with Him do you want to walk. And the closer you walk to Him, the more He uses you for His glory and His kingdom, and to make His priorities our priorities. So there's choice involved, and we have to understand the difference between a biblical worldview that only comes through the study of the Word and, being a good American or a good patriot, or there are other things that we can measure ourselves by, but the Bible's pretty clear. It's not just following rules. I'm not a rules guy. I just don't function with that well. I'm a relational guy. And so slowly learning how to have a relationship with God only comes by spending time alone with Him. So you trust Him more. You begin to take risks on what He says. And then He does crazy things and answers prayer miraculously. We could keep going here all day with that, but small steps at a time, He does show more and more of Himself as we seek Him. We have to have a heart that seeks after Him.
One of the things I contemplate a lot is just how fortunate we are to live in this country and to have the ability to pray and gather to worship God. And you can do that even if you're not worshiping the same God that you and I do. And it seems to me that over my lifetime, the country as a whole has just become so much more affluent than we were in my early years. My parents had a party line at our house. I mean, you'd pick up the phone and you'd hear other people talking on it. You'd set it quietly back in the cradle and wait 5 minutes and try again. There was no dial on the phone. Air travel was relatively new. There were commercial airlines when I was a kid, but in the big scheme of things, it was maybe a 30-year-old industry when I was born, and it has advanced so rapidly, and just the innovation that we've seen in this country and the affluence that is open and available to anybody who wants to grab it. I would naively perhaps think that all of that would make us a very grateful people. Yet it seems that with all of the goodness and bounty that we are able to enjoy, and the affluence that we have achieved, and the education that has been made available, you would think the world would become a better organized and happier place to live. But there seems to be as much, if not more, turmoil in the world today than there maybe has ever been in my lifetime. I wasn't alive in World War II. I lived through the Vietnam War. That I thought it was going to be permanent. Every day on the front page of the newspaper for 10 years. But once that was resolved, we've enjoyed a period of extended peace for the most part. Obviously, there have been other skirmishes that have lasted, like the Iraq War that should never have begun, that lasted for 10 years, maybe 12. Then there was Afghanistan. Is there a means by which the people of this country can first and foremost come together? And is God the way that could happen?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, from a biblical worldview, from that perspective, first of all, prophecy in that Bible that we're open to study indicates that things are going to get worse. Before the very end, there's a promise that Jesus Christ returns in the flesh, that he's coming back. And when I say getting worse, God's not surprised by this. I think, when you read the book of Romans, you understand that, first of all, it wasn't God the Father, it was Jesus Christ the Son, who is the creator of the world, the same guy they nailed to a cross. And it says that in Romans, that before the world was created, God intended to send his Son as a sacrifice for our sins. Now, I read that and I go, well, if I was going to buy a kit and build a grandfather clock and I knew that were parts missing or something was broke, I wouldn't continue to build that grandfather clock. I'd trade it in and get another one. God's got a different way of doing things, though. He went ahead and created this world anyway, knowing we would reject him, knowing we'd choose our own way, knowing that we were not going to welcome him in and choose his way and walk with him in accordance with his terms. And he made us anyway, knowing full well it was going to require him to make this incredible sacrifice by sending his Son to die for our sins, because he wants relationship with us. So with that backdrop, seeing world events, things are going where prophecy in the Bible told us they would go. Things, Armageddon, all that stuff you can read in the book of Revelation. It's going in that direction. And the answer to your question, in my opinion, is that God is the only answer for this country, because we are winding things down here to what the Bible would describe as the last days. And it's ironic because throughout Scripture, Jesus pitched this dichotomy perfectly. You can't serve God and money. He said that point blank. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have money. It means that money makes a terrible God. And so as time goes, you're talking about convenience and ease and speed, bigger, better, faster, more. Yeah, we're that society. But you mentioned the irony is the more stuff we get, the faster things go, the easier, supposedly more convenient things become, the farther we seem to be getting from God. It was Alexander Solzhenitsyn that said that about Russia. How did they get the way they got? He said, we forgot God.
Can we get it back? Can we restore religion as part of the fabric of America?
Individually, we can come back to God. As a nation, I have my doubts. It's on an individual basis of faith in what Christ has done and living in accordance to what that Bible teaches. That's an individual thing. Billy Graham was good at filling auditoriums and stadiums, and yet those folks who walked forward, was that decision for Christ that they made on television that we saw for 50 years legitimate? You'd have to know the individual to answer that question. So while there's an opportunity for a crowd in many instances, it still boils down to what is your individual walk with Christ like? So can we? Yeah, there have been revivals throughout history where a large group of people did turn back to the Lord, right? I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that if a crowd of people are going to come back to him, they got to do it one at a time.
Well, the biggest source of optimism that I've heard in a long time is that Zen, what are they?
Gen Z.
A Gen Zer. That's what you are, Anthony. Yeah, you're a Gen Zer. But they're returning to God and church in droves, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
What you reckon is has caused that phenomenon?
I think you see that as a response to also an increase in suicide and nihilism. It's like, wait a minute, we've done what the system said we should do. Kids have done what they were told to do. They went and got an education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now where's that get them?
So it's timely that you came on with us today, Bruce, because just following this interview, we are going to be speaking to Mike Arnold, who has written a book called Epicenter, Nigeria. And he's really shined a light on just how prominent Nigeria has been in our global history and what a commanding role they play. And I understand that you actually spent a good number of years in Nigeria with your folks.
Yeah, well, that was one of those 27 moves in 20 years I referenced earlier, but that is the place where my dad was appointed by the Salvation Army as the principal of the Salvation Army Training College in Lagos, Nigeria, right in their capital.
Right, which you alluded to earlier. How long did you live there?
Well, we were in England for just under a year, and then we moved to Lagos in '65. We were only there till March of '67, and that was not the plan.
So a couple of years almost. Tell us what life was like and set the stage for us so we'll have a little glimpse before we speak to Mike Arnold.
Well, in the book, I go into quite some detail about it, but 98 degrees, 98% humidity, 365 days a year. You're on the equator. So, you take your blue suede shoes and put them in the closet and take them out the following Sunday, and they're green suede shoes. It's just how it was. It's jungle. It's rough. I loved it as a kid because, you could pretty well do what you want. It was maybe how you grew up in Georgia back in the day too. Make sure you're home before dark.
It was safe.
Yeah. It felt that way up until it wasn't. And then there was a military coup that happened on January 6, 1966. And we were there about a year. And the Army overthrew the government by assassinating 21 heads of state, including their prime minister. And it happened about 8 blocks from where we were living.
My gosh.
And so the Nigerian army, and there's factions that, unless you're living there and understand how tribal factions work, which the English knew nothing about when they established Nigeria as a quote unquote nation 100 years earlier. But, different tribes, there are Muslim leaning tribes, there are Christian leaning tribes. And so you have Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba are 3 of the big major tribe groups. And then you got guys in the army who are part of one tribe and want nothing to do with the others. So there was a faction of Muslim army officers that were behind the assassinations that night. So it got very tense very quickly, and there was shooting in the streets. And ultimately, there was 2 attempts on my father's life in the last 3 months that we lived there, where assassins were sent onto the Salvation Army campus. 2 different occasions. Both times our night watchman caught the guy, took care of him with a nightstick. Apparently the second one he actually killed, brought him up the stairs in the middle of the night, and my mom spotted the blood dripping from the gentleman's ear, knowing that his head had been crushed. And so that was our cue there. The Salvation Army in London was the territorial headquarters that commanded over my folks, said it's time to pack your bags and move. So in March of '67, we evacuated. We caught the last 2 berths aboard a ship called the Accra, which sailed from London up to Southampton, England. And then back in the day, Juan Tripp with Pan Am Airlines offered free fare home for American citizens, like he had been doing for Vietnam soldiers that needed to get back and forth. He gave them free fare. Well, we flew home from Heathrow to JFK March 15th, 1967. It was snowing sideways when we got to New York after living on the equator for those years. So we all had blonde hair, crew cuts, and tan skin, and no winter coats when we came back to America.
Culture shock. Well, thank you so much, Bruce Wolff, for coming on. He's written the book, Finding Hope Navigating an Obscure Path, Learning to Trust God When You Can Barely understand him.
Can I put a plug in there with a coupon before we're done?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, so Faithful Text is the site to go to. You save 25% this year because it's the 250th anniversary of the birthday of America. And that coupon code, if you go to faithfultext.com, is 250TH, like 250th, BDAY, abbreviated for birthday, 250TH, BDAY. At the checkout on faithfultext.com, you'll get 25% off. Or you can just go anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Nobles also has the book.
So, pilot, missionary, author, and a pretty darn good salesman. We'll put the link and the code on the website and on our broadcast today in the comments, so that anyone that wants to go get faithfultext.com and buy Bruce's book there, use the promo code 250TH BDAY. That's 250th birthday.
That's Tango Hotel Bravo Delta Alpha Yankee. I didn't hear that yet.
Spoken as a true aviator. Bruce Wolff, thank you for coming on The Truth. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you, John.